A quick word from our sponsors LiveChief. If you are into any kind of TCG or you just like anime, make sure to use the code HEAL5 for 5% of your order while supporting the channel. Hello guys, in today's video I have the pleasure of being with Kevin Lee, winner of the championship finals in Paris and most recently champion of the Edinburgh Regional with IMU. Kevin has also just released his full IMU guide, and with the code HEAL10 you'll get a 10% discount while supporting the channel. But now, let's just jump straight into the interview. Hi Kevin.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
In your Edinburgh list, as well as in the list of the winner from the Bordeaux, Susie is completely absent. In the current meta, do you not consider her impactful enough to deserve a slot in a deck where space is already extremely tight? Personally, I found far fewer opportunities and windows to play her compared to St. Charles, which you also run. What are your thoughts about the two cards?
Okay, so Stussy is like a very interesting topic, and like everybody is arguing about it if we should include her into the list or not. So for me personally, she's, as you said, not impactful enough to include her in my list. Even though she can be like really powerful in certain situations, she requires, in my opinion, like a very specific matchup to play her out. So I have tested her quite a lot, and I have come to the conclusion that playing her on curve is almost never good, because playing her on 9 Don will make you like tap out on Don completely, and this makes you like very like vulnerable, right? So for example, if you play against Ace and they have played like a Josu or another 6-cost character like Vista or the 6-cost Yamato before, they will like most likely stick on the board and can just swing really big in return. So in making it for us like really awkward to count out and forces us to take like too many lives and eventually like dropping down to like 1 or 0 lives, and that's not what we want to have, right? And if we miss the window to play her, she's just a brick that we just want to avoid to draw. And on top of that, she's I think only good for like 2 matchups. It's for one against Ace and the other one being Roger, but I think tagging for a deck like Roger is just not worth it at the moment. And otherwise, in other matchups, he's just useless most of the time. So right now, I prefer to play a more consistent list with other cards that perform like overall better into most decks. So yes, many people play either Carlos or Stussy, and I for sure prefer at the moment saying Carlos over Stussy. I think Carlos is good in like almost every relevant matchup, while Stussy is just dead in some of those. So I think Carlos is essentially just a small jump blocker, and he fits like very well into a format, right? So where you often expect like really tall swings, he functions essentially just as a one-cut counter to every attack. Therefore, he's also really good into Ace. One key thing about Carlos also that he's just very useful in the mirror. So being just a one-cost blocker with like the Mary draw stage, and also he has the ability to like trash one card. This helps getting to the range of 7 cards in trash in the mirror, and this opens like one more line in the mirror, so you can like protect your board when they plan out to play a Mars, for example. On top of that, he is a 1k counter as well. And he's a searchable target with either Saint Sharia or the one-cost search event. And by playing him, it makes the deck like a little bit more consistent than just playing Stussy.
Moving on to the format's key matchup, we can start with Ace. This matchup is generally considered heavily dice dependent. Do you agree with this statement in particular? How does your playstyle change when you're going first versus going second? And finally, if the Ace player has Dawn underneath the leader, do you tend to avoid attacking him early? Or do you instead try to maximize the chance of pushing them down on life?
Yes, if equally strong players are playing against each other, I would definitely agree with the statement. So whoever gets to go second will usually have like the advantage. And that is because the Ace player will be able to play 2 big bodies before we play our first 10 cost 5 Elder. And that's just so much tempo on the Ace side, right? Whenever IMU goes second, the Ace player will or can just only play 1 big body before we can play our first 10 cost 5 Elder. And there's just a huge shift in like the pressure or like the tempo, right? But with that being said, I think if Ace sees like the perfect curve with like his 4 drop into like 6 drop into the 8 cost events into like 2 10 cost blocker builds, there's a little we can do. But I think if Ace just misses one piece of their like so-called perfect curve, especially the I'm Whitebeard event on 8, I think IMU will be in a good spot. So my opinion, Emu is a little bit better going first than Aces because Emu is just a little bit more consistent and will see like the needed pieces a little bit more likely than Ace does. So in this regard, I think Emu is just a little bit better, and that's also what I have experienced in Edinburgh, where I won the regional. So a lot of my ace opponents were missing like a crucial piece on curve, and then if they miss just one piece, it was just most of the time enough to win most of these games. I think the play style does not change too much. It just becomes a little bit harder to like withstand the pressure. But it is still like we're still playing a game of survival, like controlling the board, try to be as healthy as we can until we reach our 10 Don turn. But there are like some other lines we can take going first. For example, on like 7 Don, we either want to play a Nusjuro or a Mars, depending on the board state. If they have played like a Josu, for example, we want to go for Nusjuro here to like reduce the rested character by 2000, which is most likely be a Focus Marco. But if they have played like a 5-cost Yamato or another focus Marco, Mars will be better here. While Mars is the most optimal play most of the time when we go second on 6 Don. And yeah, and something that is also really helpful when going first is to play out the Carlos block on 3 Don, because later on we do not have the spare Don to do so. About the ace player having the Don under the leader. So basically, we want to always like demand cards from the hand and never want to give them like the free value with their leader ability. Means if the leader ability has activated like once, we should continue like pressuring with other attacks, because like the ace leader ability is just once per turn, right? So yes, I avoid attacking their life whenever I cannot force my opponent to trash more cards out of the hand after activating his leader ability. But if we have like two bodies that can swing, we should always swing with both. Or if we can like KO a character through our Mars, for example, which also activates the leader ability, we should follow up and swing with our remaining like characters or leader as well. So when playing against Ace, we should like always think what is the most effective way to get like cards out of the hand. So yeah, we should be careful not to give him the free value through the leader ability. This is like really important.
Another fundamental matchup is of course the mirror. This is one also often described as being determined by the dice, where going first makes you the aggressor, going second pushes you into a defender role, eventually leading to the 10 turn play if the game goes that far. How do you personally approach the mirror? And when do you decide to rest your pieces? Do you prefer to attack with them early, or do you wait to extract the maximum value from Jupiter?
The Emu mirror is really interesting. I think this matchup like really rewards a player who is like fundamentally very solid at like one piece. It's like all about making efficient trades, like winning the board, knowing when to push life, managing your resources well, and like having a good overall read on how the game is going to play out. So it's like a very fundamental one piece, as I said, and that's exactly what I really like about the mirror. How the mirror's being played out depends on the dice roll, as you correctly said. The player going first is like usually the aggressor, and wants to put the player going second into a spot where he has to stabilize. Generally, as the player going first, you always want to swing with your board. As I mentioned, you are the aggressor. You don't want to give the player going second like too much time to stabilize. In response, the player going second should also like usually focus on swinging to the rested characters on the board as well. So basically, in the mid game, it's all about like fighting for board, who trades into the board better and have like more efficient resource management will usually like gain control of the game. So an instance where we don't want to rest our board is when the player going first like decides not to swing with their board. Then the player going second should also like respond with not resting their characters. And then it will like eventually become a war of like multiple 7k swings later on when we play out the Jupiter. And I think another instance where we don't want to like immediately turn our board is when the opposing player has a Nusjuro as setup. Nusjuro just makes it too easy to trade into the board, and sometimes we do not want to give them like the advantage of the Nusjuro's ability, and then we rather want to wait a little bit and be more patient and then push later with like a Jupiter, or maybe trade with another Nusjuro that of our own, for example. I think in summary, I would say the player going first should always attack and be aggressive, while the player going second just should just respond on how the player will first plays out his turns. And then in the late game, it's all about like reading the game state. So either we can drag out the game by like one more turn, maybe by playing one more 10 cost 5 Elder, or we have to attempt for lethal.
Lastly, we have Zoro, generally considered the most comfortable matchup among the three. How do you approach this matchup? Do you usually try to hard counter every attack from the start, or do you prefer to take the first lives?
So against Zoro, I think IMU is slightly favored, even though not by that much, I would say. That is because Zoro has like a very huge high roll potential. If Zoro can hit like the perfect curve with like a Mihawk into like the Reston Zoro into the 2-cost Kushiro, and follow up with like a Law into another 5-cost character, it can be like quite tricky. And if they can like pull that off, they become wide like really quickly and poke our life with like multiple swings, and we cannot really respond too well. And especially if they also manage to play out one of their protection pieces like the 2-cost Kushiro. But Zoro like requires a lot of pieces to be this explosive. So again, in terms of consistency, IMU is just has the advantage again. If we manage to go second, I think we are really favored. But if Zoro can go second and see the curve, it's quite hard to manage. But because of that, because Zoro like needs to see so many pieces, our game plan will be starving. So essentially, we want to give lower odds of the high roll for Zoro, right? So our game plan is that we want to do our best to be as healthy as possible. Try to counter out like every attack that just requires one card usually. In the late game, Zoro will eventually swing really tall because they want to make like use of the leader ability. To counter that strategy with like resting our characters and swing like multiple times with the leader, we want to use our leader ability on our active characters. This also makes us draw an additional card so we can kind of maintain a more healthy hand size. And by doing so, we do not give him like the free value of their 5-cost Tashigi or their 4-cost Kuina or like any rest abilities that they have. Another reason to like sack our board to basically use the leader ability on our board is their 4-cost Restan Zoro. It is like most of the time active, and we won't have like characters to swing into anyways. We don't need a board in the early and mid game anyways. So why just don't use the leader ability, right? The only time where we don't want to use the leader ability on our active characters is when we set up like 2 blockers. This can like happen on 8 or 9 dawn where we play as Mars and a Valkyrie, for example. If you have like 2 blockers, I think you should definitely not like KO them. But like when we reach 10 dawn, we play out our first 10 cost 5 Elder. We finally start swinging. At this point, we are putting the Zoro like on the clock. And most of the time, we will go like for a 2-turn lethal attempt. So most of the time, Zoro will go all in at some point. And if we can counter that out, we will just win the game. The one more thing to note is that setting up a third blocker after we resolve our 10 cost 5 Elder is really helpful to like play around their rest abilities like Deadman's Game and other rest abilities that they have. But overall, I think IMU is quite a little bit favored in this matchup.
And that's all for today. Huge thanks, Kevin, for your time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You can find the link of this IMU guide in the description, and bye.
Bye bye.